Did it, the books, the bid it, the books, the did it, the books, books.
All right. Welcome back to I'll Read It Eventually. In lieu of episodes where I show you books that I have hauled or found or thrifted, going forward, of course, I am not going to be doing that. Um, at least for the next 6 months, I won't be doing that at all. And then after that, we'll sort of see what regularity I allow myself to do that in, because I have a giant to be read list, much of which is physical. Um, Last time that anybody looked at that amount of books, I had 745 books to be read. And that wasn't including Middlemarch that I just read recently. Um, so, in lieu of telling you books that I've bought and now are on that list, which I won't be doing, I will be showing you books which, on a second or third look on my bookshelves, I've decided, you know what? I'm not actually going to read this book, or this book is not worth having on my shelf to read in the near future. So, um, that will sort of take the place of that, along with I think some episodes on generally bookish things, whether that's websites for bookish people or um, genres that I enjoy and some characteristic books in those genres and some other things that I've kind of got bumping around in my head. Um, so be on the lookout for that. Um, so to get started, books that are no longer on my to be read list. Um, again, we were at 745. Not anymore. The first book that I'm deciding I'm not going to take a crack at is this book, Wealth as Peril and Obligation by Sondra. I think it's Ellie Wheeler. Um, two reasons that I'm not going to finish reading this. Number one, New Testament on possessions. So it's a book about money and possessions, according to the New Testament. Two reasons I'm not going to read this book. Number one, it is very clearly written as some sort of doctoral thesis. So there's a lot of sort of academic jargony speak. They take a whole paragraph to say what could be said in a sentence. I hate that kind of reading. I hate it. I cannot stand that sort of thing. Um, it sounds flowery. I have written papers that sound like this book, and I hated it because the professor said, "Hey, this paper needs to be 12 pages long." Okay, great. Well, I can vamp for 12 pages. This book is vamping for 150 or something like that. So that's number one reason why I'm not going to read it. I know that I will not enjoy the process of reading it. No. Secondly, I actually have two other books that are about wealth in the Bible. One of which is from a really well respected series of New Testament monographs that I actually have a couple of in digital copy, a couple other entries in the series in digital copy. So I know that they're really high quality. They are still kind of in this academic sort of writing. Um, but the author is one that I know. This is not an author I know. And the series is one that I have a lot more respect for. So I think that will probably be a lot better use of my time than this book would be. So this one is going to go the way of the dodo. Nothing wrong with it other than I just don't enjoy the process of reading it. So Wealth as Peril and Obligation. No, thank you. Um, Second one that I'm letting go is a real different kind of book. This is Six Records of a Floating Life by Shen. Um, this is essentially like a personal set of biographical writings by a Chinese man in the 1800s. He's, if you watch the video about Middlemarch, he's kind of like Fred in Middlemarch. He's just kind of got a failure to launch. He's got a job, but he's not really very good at it and doesn't care about it. And he's just sort of like dissipating his youth in nonsense. Um, there's also a lot in this book about marriage, apparently. On reading the back of this book, I'm just like, I know that when I picked this up, and I remember picking this up because it was free. The other book was free. That book about wealth was free. This book was, I think, $1. Um, and I know that when I picked it up, I was like, well, it was $1, so how bad could it be? That was the wrong attitude to have. So, I'm sure that there's something good in here. I just don't, yeah, I just don't want to take the time to dig into it. And, yeah, for that reason, 6 Records of a Floating Life by Shen will grace the bookshelf of somebody else. Right. Um, the next book that I'm letting go, and I do have a nice stack here, so I am pleased with that. The next book that I'm letting go is American Happiness and Discontents by George F. Will. There's Mr. Will right there. He's a conservative columnist. He's written in a number of places. I know him primarily from the National Review, which I don't really read anymore, but used to read. And it's a periodical, if you are not aware. And I just, he's fine. His opinions are fine. Um, I don't disagree too much with anything that he happens to say. When I picked up this book, which is pretty chunky, I thought that this was him sort of doing a book length diagnosis of what he thought was going on with America. And I was like, oh, he's got some good ideas. I bet that would be interesting. No, this is actually just a bunch of his columns from a bunch of different publications put into the same book that cover the last, well, this book came out in 2020, so it covers everything from 2008 to 2020. Yeah, I don't think that I need to read all of this. They say that the news is the first draft of history, and having written some first draft historical papers in getting a degree in history, I can tell you that first drafts suck. Now, granted, he had an editor and he won a Pulitzer, but I guarantee you that even though this book, the opinions in it are less than 20 years old, I guarantee you half of them are so out of date it's laughable. Nobody's going to read this book, I bet, well, I bet people aren't reading this book right now, but nobody's going to read this book in half a century because the opinions are going to all be out of date. So, yeah, I'm just not going to take the time to fill my head with them because I'm sure he's got some interesting stuff to say, but yeah, no thanks. So, George F. Will, American Happiness and Discontent. The next 3 all go together, and I got them all for free. Actually, I got all the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books here were all free. Well, they're probably from a dollar bookshelf thing where you fill up a whole bag for $1. So they may have been like 3 cents a piece when it all came out in the wash. These are all from the Old Testament series of guides to biblical scholarship. We have the Old Testament and the Historian, form criticism of the Old Testament, and literary criticism of the Old Testament. I picked these up. They were free. I am getting a degree in biblical studies, so these are the kinds of things that I'm interested in. The problem is that these are very much introductory texts. And I'm not saying that I know everything there is to know about literary criticism, form criticism, or the Old Testament and Historian. But I know that these books, being very thin, introductory volumes, I already own books about this, or which contain sections about this. There is no reason for me to have these tiny, slim little volumes just to read them when I will almost certainly be reading. I mean, there's a book on this shelf right here, just below the video. There's a book that has sections about all 3 of these things. So there's just no reason for me to have these 3 books. I'm sure they're great. They're a little dated. I think I don't see a date on the back here, but they're very clearly dated. They came from a sell shelf at a library. Yeah, they're from the 70s. So doesn't mean that everything in them is wrong. I don't think the field of form literary criticism or historical criticism of the Old Testament has actually advanced all that much, just by my own lights, in the last 50 years. Not as much as some of the people working in the field would have you believe. So I bet these aren't that drastically out of date. But again, I have books which will cover the same ground and were written more recently. So yeah, I don't think that it's worth taking the time to read these three in addition. So, um, that was kind of my thinking there. Again, those were, I mean, like in the aggregate, probably 3 cents. I don't remember if they were on the fill up a bag for $1 shelf or the free shelf. Those two are next to each other in the seminary library. And so when I would go and look at that shelf, those two shelves, it was just sort of, all right, I'm going to put everything I want in a bag and give them $1 and off I go. So, you know, that was kind of the idea. So I don't know how much those cost by themselves, but it couldn't have been much because I always fill up a bag when I go. So, um, hence the giant physical to be read list. These books also came from that shelf. This is a pair of volumes called Chapters in Western Civilization by some guys, I think all guys, maybe some gals too, at Columbia University Press. So far as I can tell, these are companion readers to a course in Western civilization at Columbia, um, from sometime in the 1960s or 70s, I think. Oh, wow. This one was written in the 1940s, so they're older than I thought. Um, this is the kind of stuff I'm interested in. And I mean, there's chapters in here about the French Revolution. There's chapters in here about the social and religious context of the Middle Ages and how it's changed in modernity. It's all stuff that I'm interested in. But again, I have other books which will touch on these topics, and these are very much a bunch of different authors writing essays, which I am certain, and I've read part of this, will be disjointed from one another. I'd rather have one person tell me all these things, or sort of weave through all these things. I can also tell just in reading them that they're going to be a bit of a chore to read, and I don't think that all reading should just be simple and pleasurable and easy. But my willingness to put myself through a book decreases substantially if I know that there is a sequel, which I will also have to put myself through. Surest way for me to not finish a trilogy or some series of books is if the first one is a bit of a slog. That's what happened, if you're familiar, that's what happened with The Wheel of Time. I enjoyed the first book of the Wheel of Time series, big fantasy series, should be right up my alley. And then I got to the second one and I started reading it after pausing reading the series. I started reading the second one 2 or 3 months after reading the first one, and I was like, gosh, this guy uses a lot of words. I can't read 13 more of these, and they're like 800-page fantasy novels. I was like, I cannot read 14 of these in total. Just can't be worth the time. So this is the same way. Guarantee you there's some good stuff in here. Gonna forego the experience and let somebody else get at them. They're really nice. They're like hardcover. And I love the spine chapters in Western civilization. I mean, that just sounds really cool. But again, I just don't think it's going to be worth the time investment. So, last one is The Religious History of the American People by Sidney Ahlstrom. This book won the National Book Award in 1973, and it is a beast. It's almost 900 pages of, oh no, that's wrong. Holy Toledo. It's almost 1,100 pages of just the actual text of the book. There's a bibliography and notes in the back, but 1,100 pages. And this covers everything from Europe before colonization of the Americas begins all the way up to the 70s. There are a lot of things in that sweep of time that I would be interested in from a religious perspective, for sure. Particularly what happens to the Anglican Church in America. Really interested in that. Um, some of the religious movements during the Progressive Era around the turn of the 20th century. Really interested in that. And then honestly, I would be interested in a book that went from like 1970 to today and did this. Obviously, that's not this book. And so ultimately, again, kind of like with the last one, my feeling was, I bet there's some really good stuff in here. Look how many pages I would have to read to find that good stuff. Because I mean, I flipped through this as I was sort of trying to decide, and I'd stop and read a page, and that page would seem really really cool or really interesting, and then I'd flip over 20 30 pages later and I'd read it and I'd be like, oh gosh, this sounds awful. Actually, that literally just happened. There was something about Catholicism in the 1800s, and then I flipped over a page and started talking about Unitarianism. Oh gosh, good lord, no thank you. Oh, here we go again. The rise of parties in American Episcopalianism. Sure, absolutely. On the same page, Romanticism and the Catholic spirit. Blech. No. So yeah, I think this book is just going to be a very uneven experience for me in terms of things I care about and things I don't. And I think ultimately what would happen is I would just be flipping past dozens of pages to get to sections I wanted to read. Um, to me, that does not merit keeping an 1,100 page book on the shelf, either to read or that I have read, especially if I skipped dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of pages. So, um, yeah. Ultimately, though, I don't think it's that big of a deal because, again, this book, along with a whole bag of others, cost me $1. So I'm not really out because this was probably like 3 cents. So even if I take it to half price books, which is what I'm going to do, they'll probably give me 3 cents for it. So I make my money back. So yeah. So this one's gonna be let go. Somebody else may get a hold of it and enjoy it. So that brings my physical to be read list down to 736, soon to be 735, because I finished Middlemarch and I haven't yet decided what I'm reading next. It's going to be one of two books over here that you'll be hearing about very soon, because both of them are pretty short. And so it won't be a to be read anymore. It will be read, or I'll have chucked it. So, making some progress. Progress will be slower going forward because I think the chaff like this will very quickly get noticed and get ejected. At least that's the hope. So, yeah. So we'll see. But shopping the shelf continues, and for the moment is going very well. So, I will see you next time. Go read something or determine that you're not going to read something and get rid of it.